Hello, I'm Elizabeth Nossick, Curator of Education and Exhibits, and I am pleased to introduce our exhibit, Railroads in the American Industrial Landscape, Ted Rose Paintings and Photographs. Now this is a traveling exhibit from the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. It consists of 25 gelatin black and white prints, 4 watercolors, and 1 charcoal drawing. Today we're going to give you an overview of the exhibit with a focus on 5 specific works that best illustrate Rose's artistic legacy. The featured artist, Ted Rose, was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The son of an architect, Rose took his first train ride at the age of 9 to a railroad fair in Chicago. As a teenager, he traveled throughout the United States and Canada, photographing and sketching in watercolor what would be the end of the steam locomotive era. He graduated from the University of Illinois in 1962 with a BFA in painting and minors in printmaking and history. After a tour in Vietnam, Rose moved to New Mexico, eventually settling in Santa Fe, where he opened a graphic design business in 1983, and he started painting watercolors full-time. It is Rose's personal experiences acquired while riding and observing trains and hanging out with railroad workers, as well as the environments in which trains operate, that informed this work. Showcasing railroads as magnificent symbols of industrial civilization provides the main subject for his art and is the main topic of this exhibition. If the most important element of a good photo is the ability of the photograph to communicate with the viewer, a good photograph should be able to tell a story through its composition, its lighting, and most importantly, its subject matter. Ted Rose's photographs do this. His gift for composition jumps out at the viewer from his photographs, whether it's a panoramic view of a train passing through a landscape or a close-up of the complex parts of a locomotive. Rose's photograph, Valve Gear and Rods of Pacific 2519, was taken in Mexico in 1960. As you look at the photograph, you can see how the engine valve gear and rods could be mistaken for a sculpture. Now this photograph reeks of power and beauty. Rose does this by focusing the viewer's attention on its structure and form as a work of industrial design. One of the strongest features of Rose's photography is his use of light. He uses light to enhance his compositions. This is true whether the light source is being projected from the front of a locomotive within the image or from some source external to it. Arguably the best example of this is his image of the roundhouse interior of the Illinois Central Railroad at Carbondale. Light floods the darkened interior of the roundhouse. It streams inside from the wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. By coming through the windows, it reveals a locomotive at rest. This photograph bears the earliest date in the exhibition, 1957. Rose was just 17 years old when he took it. It is arguably a masterpiece, suggesting that the artist's sensibilities and skills were already well advanced at this early stage in his career. Besides making images that feature trains themselves, Rose, the son of an architect, was adept at capturing the architectural structures associated with railroads. Now this image is one of my very favorites. It portrays a railroad worker's family life by showing a boxcar parked on an unused track of the National Railways of Mexico. The broken down structure is fronted with a garden and other decorations in an effort to personalize the space, and a woman dressed in white facing the structure confirms it as a family home. This photograph is a preview of how Rose would incorporate a broader view of life surrounding railroads into his paintings. While Rose painted as a young man and was an art major in college, he focused on being a graphic artist until 1983. But between that time and his death in 2002, Rose produced over 1,000 watercolors, the large majority of them reflecting his passion for railroads. You can see the influence of his early photography on his later watercolors. He is still focusing on the modern industrial landscape and using the railroad as its central theme. And he is still depicting the humanity and dignity of the railroad workers. Rose continued to take photographs throughout his career, but mostly for use as a sketchbook to aid in the painting's composition. And he would pair these sketch photographs with reference drawings and, of course, his imagination. Let's look a little more closely at two of these watercolors. The first image we're going to look a little bit more closely at is titled Through Freight. You can see Rose's talent for creating both detail and mood using what has been described as limpid colors and liquid washes. Can you see how his paintings invited the viewer in to a world rich with color that was a cross between realism and imagination? Not unexpectedly, Rose's paintings after 1983 show a greater depth of experience than his earlier photographs. In Go With the Flow, you can see this in his portrayal of human subjects. Rose was especially known for treating them with both empathy and respect. You also see Rose's technical abilities in composition. This would have been acquired in part through his work as a master graphic designer. Ted Rose's art tells the story of how railroads shaped the American landscape and those who lived in it. Both his photographs and paintings add to our aesthetic appreciation and historical understanding of an industrial era now mostly gone. Once we reopen, I hope you will come and see this thought-provoking exhibit at the Colorado Railroad Museum. It has been extended through the end of 2020.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Gilmore, Curator of Collections here at the Colorado Railroad Museum. My colleague Elizabeth just showcased the traveling exhibit, Railroads in the American Industrial Landscape, Ted Rose Paintings and Photographs. And now I'd like to show you some Ted Rose items which are part of the Colorado Railroad Museum's permanent collection. First off is this stamp plate of first-class 33-cent stamps from 1998. The United States Postal Service selected Ted Rose to paint the images for these stamps for the All Aboard series commemorating America's railroad history. Featured locomotives include the Daylight, the 20th Century Limited, the Super Chief, the Congressional, and the Hiawatha. Something all of these locomotives have in common is that they are streamliners and they are all steam-powered. Ted had a particular fondness for illustrating the last days of steam. This train robbery painting was actually commissioned for an article for Frontier Airlines in-flight magazine, known as Wild Blue Yonder. It depicts a scene of a robbery of a Wells Fargo express baggage car. Unfortunately, we do not know much else about this piece, except that Ted considered it an outlier in comparison to his other works, most likely because it is a fictional scene, and he decided to give it to the Colorado Railroad Museum. In 1992, Ted actually designed the paint scheme for the Santa Fe Southern, and this painting is a rendition of what he expected it to look like while pulling through Santa Fe, New Mexico. He lived in Santa Fe until his death in 2002. This piece is what I consider the crown jewel of our Ted Rose collection. It's entitled Stock Extra and depicts an event from the life of our museum founder, Bob Richardson. Bob was a very famous train chaser and loved to photograph the trains he chased. This image depicts a trip Bob took in 1953 near Marshall Pass, Colorado. Here, he was chasing the last 4-engine train of powder-horn sheep from the Gunnison Valley near Marshall Pass. In this scene, a long train of loaded livestock cars pauses on the curve at Shawano, while the lead K-36 locomotive takes water. Gunnison County ranchers made many shipments of cattle and sheep to market over this pass, which was part of the original Denver and Rio Grande transcontinental narrow-gauge main line. This section of the pass was a feat of engineering, as it required 4.1 miles through several reverse curves to reach the summit. Ted rarely painted depictions of other people's memories, but he decided to make an exception due to his admiration for Bob. Using a collection of Bob's photos from that day, he was able to create this painting, commissioned for the cover art on the museum's annual number 21, entitled Narrow Gauge News. There are 5 other Ted Rose works within that annual. In addition to Annual 21, Ted illustrated several books. One such book is a children's story entitled The Banshee Train, written in 1995 by Odds Bodkin. The entire book is illustrated with Ted's paintings, and it recounts a folklore story about a banshee train that saved another train from toppling over Gore Canyon due to a washed-out trestle bridge. In Irish folklore, a banshee is a female spirit whose cries usually foreshadow an impending death. But in this case, the banshee herd actually helped the engineers stop the train before it fell over the canyon's edge, thus saving the many lives on board. In the 1960s, Ted worked for Trains magazine. David Morgan was editor of the magazine at that time and was quite taken with Ted's artwork. Therefore, David had Ted design the layout and the cover art of his book, Canadian Steam. The book highlights the romance surrounding steam railroading, and as such, many of the photos evoke the familiar nostalgia associated with the mystique of the steam locomotive. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us next time.
If you enjoy our content, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Sharing and commenting in particular may qualify as virtual engagements for important funding programs like the SCFD.